Good sticks, everyone. Welcome to the Captain Avalanche Fancast, your unofficial source for all things Colorado Avalanche hockey and more from a fan perspective. Hosted by me, Captain Avalanche Corey, and our scuba diving instructor, Dom. Now, we're no insiders. We're not inside the locker room face-to-face with our favorite players, but we hope to create a relatable and welcoming environment because we're just like all of you listening, fans. Fans with a deep passion for the game of hockey, and in this case, the Colorado Avalanche. Dom, before we talk about anything else, before we talk about that the Avalanche are finally in the win column, things are on the up and up, at least for the Avalanche, RIP the Sharks. We have something that we promised everyone would be at the very start of this episode. Do you remember what that is?
Well, first of all, I have to just put a PSA out there that take scuba diving lessons from me at your own risk. I could teach you to snorkel, but scuba diving, you might want another instructor there. But yeah, I do recall, and that was why to watch the regular season and why it's important, why it is worth your time, why the average fan who maybe is just getting into hockey and hasn't seen any of it before should be invested in the regular season instead of just waiting for the playoffs.
That's right. And I have a lot to say in regards to the games, so I think to break it up a little bit, I will go first here with what I'm thinking, because from what I recall, I think we had some distinct reasonings between the two of us. So I'll roll with what I got, and then I'll give you the floor, and then I think we'll roll right into all of our prior week's games. So why should we watch the regular season? Well, the NHL playoffs are inarguably the most exciting time in sports. Watching hockey played up to 11 at its maximum intensity when absolutely everything is all on the line, all for the hardest trophy to win in sports is an experience, and I hope to experience it live someday. Fun fact, Dom, I have never been to a hockey playoff game.
No way, really? I find that hard to believe. Are you absolutely positive?
I am absolutely positive. And really, the reason why is because really ever since I found my love for hockey is when the Avalanche really started to become good and a consistent playoff and Stanley Cup contender. So, of course, those playoff ticket prices have just continued to go up more and more. So, unfortunately, we've just never quite been able to swing it.
Well, I hope that things continue on the up here, and maybe someone in the Avs organization or one of the hockey organizations will recognize your talent on this podcast and your commitment to hockey ops, and you'll be able to be inside the building for all the games sometime in the future. I see it. I can feel it.
I know.
It's in the future for you, man.
I hope someone out there who has the power to get anybody there is listening, because man, that would genuinely be a dream come true, because I know how electric it is just on the TV. I genuinely can only imagine the atmosphere in real life. What about you? Have you managed to make it to a playoff game?
I actually have. Ironically, not for the Sharks, but for my the good old-fashioned rival that we dislike in San Jose, the Vegas Golden Knights. I was there for game one when they hosted the Canadiens. Much to my excitement, I believe that game would have been a couple years ago now in the playoffs, so it should have been 2021 or 2021.
No, yeah, 2021. That was the 2021 playoffs.
If I recall correctly, even though the Knights did wind up winning that series, I think.
No, the Canadiens won. No, that was their Cinderella one.
That's right. Okay, so that's what it was. I couldn't remember which way it was because I was so rooting for the Canadiens. But I have to say, game one, watching the Knights win at home, we were talking about it just before going live today, but a game in Vegas is an experience. It is a show. It is a presentation like anything else in Vegas is. And so you can imagine that a playoff game was even more to that extreme. And for maybe one time in my life, one night only, I was happy to be a Vegas Golden Knights fan and root for the home team just for the sheer experience of being there for a playoff game. And then you're right. Montreal pulls off the reverse sweep right after that, winning games 2 through 5. And oh, did that bring my heart joy as well. So it worked out perfectly. I was there for a win and got to be part of that exciting Vegas atmosphere and also got to watch them crash out of the playoffs unceremoniously.
I hate to be the bearer of bad news. They did not gentlemen sweep the Vegas Golden Knights. That series, I'm looking now, went to 6 games.
Oh, was it 6? Oh,
But they
man.
had 3 OT games in that series. Quite the time, I must say. But yes, you are correct that the Vegas Golden Knights had quite the dominant win in game 1, winning 4-1, and then nearly from there on, it was the Montreal Canadiens show. The Vegas Golden Knights only ever won game 4 in that series after the fact in an OT game. So that was it.
Oh, that's right. Maybe I just got a little bit overexcited and thought they did the gentleman's sweep. But
We've had a lot
either
of
way,
hockey since then.
there has been, and let's remember that was still in the recovery of COVID times. That would have been in that.
That was
Well,
still
that
bubble.
story I also told you earlier, that June visit when I was out in Vegas. So that was time when we were finally getting to have some lifting from COVID, and they were actually letting fans back at the games. So what a time to be alive.
Seriously. Well, but I feel how we get to these playoffs is equally important, and the journey being just as valuable, if not more so, than the destination. Only a little, because the destination in 2022 was the Avalanche lifting the Stanley Cup, and that was a pretty fucking cool destination. But how the Avalanche arrived at this victory is an interesting one, and the biggest story from that year wasn't the Avalanche's struggles to barely creep into the playoffs or that they were pushed to Game 7 in multiple series. No, in fact, the Avalanche dominated the entire season and coasted their way to a franchise record 56-19-7 and 119 points, and then proceeded to absolutely stomp the competition in the playoffs with an insane 16-4 record. Just had to boast about that one for a moment, but it was the story of all the small things. It was the thing that pushed a team and its fans to an historic third Stanley Cup, and it was one of those things that I think made that Stanley Cup win all the more palpable, because you could feel it leading up to it, that song was going to carry us on to victory, but that tradition would mean nothing to someone who had only started watching in the playoffs. In fact, one might wonder why the Avs kept playing this song. But this story, admittedly, is a smaller one compared to others, but it's relevant to the show and to me, obviously. But what about some other teams' stories? Well, these stories can make the playoffs even more exciting, in my opinion, when you know the context behind them. For example, the Panthers making the finals 2 years ago means not nearly as much, if at all, or if all you see is them as an 8th seed playing a 1st seed. No, this was a Panthers team that shouldn't have even been in the playoffs. It should have been Sidney Crosby and the Penguins getting absolutely stomped by the best regular season team in history, the 2022-23 Boston Bruins, but no. Instead, the Penguins missed the playoffs for the first time in a long time, might I add. I believe 16 years, Dom? 16-year streak that was broken that year?
I have to look that up, because I know in our first episode I covered how I believe the Lightning have the longest current active streak of 9, but that would sound correct. Crosby has been there for a similar amount of time, and if we think back, they hadn't missed the playoffs since at least, obviously, when they hoisted the cup back in 2016 against my beloved Sharks. So, I mean, to me, that would seem likely that 16 years. We can double check that for the fans, though. I'll get on that right now.
Yeah, and don't forget 2017 when they beat the Predators immediately after they beat the Sharks. 2 teams with no Stanley Cups getting beat by Sid and the Pens. But no, the Penguins missed the playoffs because they couldn't beat at least one of the number 30 and 31 ranked teams in the Blackhawks and the Blue Jackets. And they just had to beat one. They didn't even need to beat both, just needed to beat one. They couldn't. And instead, the Panthers get in and they beat the team that everyone thought nigh unbeatable, and they just kept doing it, winning in seemingly effortless fashion before having their Cinderella run cut short, only for an equally thrilling opportunity at redemption the following year.
Yeah, so to wrap this, or to bounce back to the Penguins quickly, they had made the playoffs from the 06-07 season all the way through to that 21-22 season. So I do see that as being we'll call it 15 to 16 years because of the season crossover.
And I believe that was the longest playoff streak in North American sports that got snapped because they couldn't beat the teams. That sucks. Well, another story that I love is the 2019 St. Louis Blues and their path to Stanley Cup glory. If you just tuned into the playoffs, you might not have known that on January 2nd, the Blues were in dead last. And keep in mind, everybody, January 2nd is about 4-ish months, 3-4-ish months into the season. And if you're that far in and you're dead last, it's not looking good for you with a record of only 15, 18, and 4. And yet, put simply, a new head coach, the hot hand of a rookie goaltender, Jordan Binnington, and a hell of a work ethic, and Ryan O'Reilly, the Blues defied all odds to become Stanley Cup champions, the first in the team's long history. This is a greatly simplified version of the story, and there's a great post from the Pucky blog that I pulled some of this information from, and I'll link it in the description because it gives a great in-depth look at the full story with analytics, stats, and frankly, how the Blues pulled off what is almost a modern-day sports miracle.
Yeah, I think it's also important to remember, you called it out there, but that is the prime rookie Jordan Binnington. And
do I look nervous?
the unfortunate side effect of that early success was the egotistical and well, let's just say a bit of a crybaby player who has been showing up in the NHL since. That season was quite the date with destiny that they made for themselves, like you said, by work ethic. But unfortunately, they have lost that inspiration, lost that work ethic, that passion. You haven't seen it on the ice since then, regular season or post. I'm not sure if they've really. I think they've made the playoffs, but never really been a true contender since that season.
No, and I remember the Avalanche playing them in the year we won the cup, the 22 playoffs, and they were, I think, arguably the biggest threat to our ability to continue on. One, because there was that mental barrier of getting over the second round, but they really gave us a hard time. But you're right. Ever since then, they haven't ever really been viewed as a real contender. And Jordan Binnington has had some up and down years since that Stanley Cup run. He regressed for a while after that, only to pull it back up, I think, this last season, and he's having an arguably decent season right now, but unfortunately the team around him just isn't super great at the current moment in time. But the problem with the Blues is they're in the middle, not good enough to compete for a cup, but not bad enough to get those first overall picks. But before we dive too deep into that rabbit hole, one last small example, once again about the Avalanche, was Ray Bourque in his story. One of the greatest defensemen of all time whose storied career almost ended without hockey's most coveted trophy. Now, his story is a combination of playoffs and regular season, but you need both halves to tell the whole story. What I'm ultimately saying is I love hockey, and the fact that I get 82 games before getting to enjoy the most thrilling 2 months in sports is a blessing and fills my nights with joy and comfort. I'm not out there analyzing every game. Sometimes I'm just out there watching the game for the game and for the love of it. I'll catch stats, crazy live moments, or hear interesting stories from the in-game analysts, and that makes the experience of watching the regular season all the more worth it, especially when it all comes to a head. And I mean, there's so many storylines that you can follow throughout the seasons. Hell, it's people's jobs just to find and track those storylines. But I digress. I've already chatted for quite a bit. Now, a chance for Dom to share why he thinks you should watch the regular season. And just finally, you don't have to watch every game, by the way. You can't. But if you have a team that you love or you like, try to catch as many of their games as possible, especially if they're a playoff team.
Yeah, you're absolutely hitting the nail on the head there, Corey. There are way too many games in a season. In fact, in the regular season, I've run the numbers, there are 1,312 regular season hockey games across the league if you consider 32 NHL teams. So therefore, 82 times 16, because two teams must always be playing against each other, we get to that number. That is an impossible number to watch every single game, track every single stat. most people, myself included, can't even watch every game for my team, and that's okay. We watch what we can and when we can because we enjoy it and we want to. So, for the record, we encourage you to watch the regular season, but don't also overextend yourself or feel forced to make hockey your life because we like to do so from time to time. I would like to say though that with those Blues, just really quickly tying something back in there.
Yeah.
We did say when you talked about them giving the Avalanche a run for their money in that second round hurdle, I think as well, I know I mentioned it previously, but the Stars have really taken over that role of being the team that challenges the Avs and just plays them well. Sometimes, and this is also a reason to watch the regular season. Sometimes, no matter how good one team is versus their opponent, how much better their talent is, there is such a thing as rivalry games. There are teams that even if they are not overall great or the best team over the whole of a season, will win more often than not against really good playoff teams. It's just a matchup game. It is they know how to play them. They've seen them. They have the scouting report. There's history. There's animosity. There's extra physicality in a sport where there's plenty of physicality, plenty of hitting and fighting. Having the Blues were the Avs' rival at the time, regardless of either team winning a Stanley Cup, they were rivals. Much hated when I remember with friends of mine in high school being out here in Colorado. So I think we see now that Dallas has started to take that away from the Blues or put more pressure on the Avs because of their success. But again, that is an important reason to watch the regular season. Rivalry games happen just like in any other sport, and it makes it all the more exciting that anyone can win on any night. Even the best of teams, those teams that are, like you said, the Bruins setting the record for the most regular season wins, they crashed unceremoniously out of the playoffs. They still lost some games. Like, anyone can win on any given night, and that makes it all the more exciting.
I totally hear you. I'm glad you mentioned rivalries. It will play a role into a bit of a conversation later.
Yeah, absolutely. We can always have more conversation about rivalries. I know you and I know our favorite ones, and I make no secret that no matter how good Vegas has been, I view them as my most disliked rival of a franchise. But if you are a Vegas Golden Knights fan out there, do not fret. I have nothing against you.
Dom hates you.
Just against your team coming in. You don't understand how when the Sharks as an expansion franchise came in the 90s and were awful. When you are an expansion franchise, if you look throughout history, they almost always are terrible. It takes time to ramp up. And so what Vegas did was unprecedented and really just made a lot of us unhappy because we've been suffering for years still with no return, and they just got there so quickly. So nothing against you as a fan, nothing against you as the people of Vegas, but alas, back to reasons why to watch the regular season. Well, we kind of hit on it, but the sport itself is a lot of fun to watch. Yeah. It is, you've put it more than once, the fastest sport, the fastest game on two legs. And that means it can be hard to keep up with. You need to take some time to learn the nuances of the game. Without watching the regular season, would you necessarily know what hit is a good hit versus a penalty? Would you know what to root for when on the ice? Would you think that checking someone's a good idea and hitting them, but instead that's actually giving the opposing team a penalty? Would you be able to recognize a hooking or a slash, these quick motions that can't be seen from the naked eye necessarily if you don't know better, if you don't know what you're looking for? And there is also, again, with the high speed, people forget that there are coaches, there are plays. You are drawing up motions on the ice, designed passing. We see it more on the power play, but this is not some sport where people are just running around like it's a schoolyard basketball game and you're just trying to score points with no real strategy. There's a lot of strategy that goes into it, recognizing skating patterns, finding where open ice is, where there might not be a player there, but because their teammates are moving so fast, you have to lead them. You have to stretch a pass in front. Or even just recognizing passing lanes, because you're watching both players on offense and defense with overlapping circles with sticks that can be easily flashed into the way. There's a lot that you can catch on to if you care enough to look. And And personally, that is something I enjoy and I say it a lot, but the fundamentals, the defense, I will always be someone who touts the defensive game, touts the goalies, just good, like I said, fundamentals in showing up, doing the things that these players would have done since they were children first playing hockey. Because some people can be born with unearthly talent and just have a natural flair that, sure, they have been training all their life. I'm not going to take that away from them, but some people are just more naturally gifted physically and skill wise. So, like, you don't always see Connor McDavid. We still haven't seen the next Wayne Gretzky, and we probably never will. It is rare. So all of the other guys who are on the ice who have earned their way to the NHL, it's those fundamentals. So that's why I love to emphasize and look for those. And I touched on it briefly, but it is important. If you want to be a fan and understand what is happening in the playoffs, you need to learn the rules. Understand what a faceoff is, when a faceoff happens. Understand what side of the ice a faceoff is on or how that works when the puck is stopped. Understand penalties and get an idea of why it makes sense. And the added benefit of, while it is not my favorite personally, for those who like it and like the skills competition, as you put it, in the regular season, we have only 5 minutes of 3v3 overtime. So unlike in the playoffs where it is play till you score 5 on 5, indefinite, something like the longest game was like 5 or 6 OTs, I want to say, where we're talking like 2 full extra games worth of play, which we love that. We endorse that. Me personally, I wish that was the regular season, but it wouldn't be sustainable. So in the regular season, you get to see that 3-on-3 hockey. It's different. It is exciting. I'm not, it might not be my favorite, but I won't take that away from it. There's a lot more open space on the ice. And then ultimately you have those shootout opportunities. So those are a couple extra reasons why to watch the regular season, because you get some things there. You get some intangibles that you just don't get in playoff hockey.
Yeah. I think with what you're saying, to build off of it, one of the best things you can do if you're learning the game is to watch it with somebody who already knows it. And I think that can be a little threatening sometimes, because some people are a little snarky about it and they act like they know everything that's going on the ice. Even today, I'm still learning new things all the time. So I think it's about finding somebody who's kind and patient and open to helping you learn the game and is open to you asking them all kinds of questions. Because for me, I genuinely, obviously I love talking about it, but I genuinely love watching hockey with people who maybe aren't as familiar, because I love it when they hit me with those questions like, oh, well, what the heck just happened there? Oh, well, this is this. Or why are they doing this? Oh, well, that's because of this. Why would they do that? Oh, that's because of this, and so on and so forth. So try and find that kind of person that you can sit and enjoy the game with, who is patient and willing to explain things to you. But to play off of your learning portion of it a little more, Dom, for those of you out there who are fans of American football, and that's mainly been your primary sport, that was my mom's sport for a really long time. And even when I watch it now, I've started getting into it a little bit. Still not really my thing. A little too slow for my tastes. But whenever I see a flag go down on a play, I'll have no idea what happened. And yet my mom's calling out exactly what has occurred in the chaos of whatever's going on down on the field. I don't know how she does it, but it's a similar concept. Think about the joys that you had learning the game of football or whatever other sport that you've enjoyed. Think about who raised you on that sport and how meaningful it was to come into it learning things as you got more and more passionate about it. I think it can be the same thing with hockey. You just have to give it that chance to learn and grow in your mind.
You are absolutely correct. I actually myself, I am a active, adamant football fan. Every Sunday, I will watch my team rain or shine, whether they are good or bad, and they are currently pretty bad. So, I can speak to that for being both a massive diehard hockey and a diehard football fan. You can be both. There is an ability to appreciate both. They don't fully overlap. The playoffs are at a different time. In fact, it is quite awesome if you think about it. You can watch the regular seasons. They typically don't overlap with each other too much because football is on Sundays during the day primarily. And then you get the playoffs in January and the Super Bowl in February. And then before long, here we are, it's almost April and May, and here's the hockey playoffs. It is the best season. That springtime when you can watch championship season. I think that's what they used to call it back on NBCSN. That is, it's quite the time if you're willing to commit and learn to appreciate the game. And Corey, you said learning from or having that safe space to be with a fan who maybe knows some stuff, and that doesn't necessarily have to be someone you know right away. That can just be, hey, you want to go watch the game and maybe you don't have it with your local coverage for the game you want to see. That's okay. There are plenty of bars. What are they going to cover on a Tuesday night? You can go there, ask someone, or maybe someone else there is already watching the game. We've already established that this is a show for those who are more 21 and up, but even if you're not 21, you can still go to a bar without having to drink beer. You can still go there for the atmosphere for the game. There are always going to be fans, no matter where you are in the country. There is somebody who is a hockey fan. There's somebody who is a football fan. They're out there, and it can be a little scary at first, but sometimes just being in their orbit, you'll naturally start to gravitate to each other over time. Corey, you and I met for one short period of time over the summer before moving into college, but our true friendship came from the fact that we were just both so much enjoying hockey so much that whenever one of our teams would score, especially against each other, you would hear the door slam at the other end of the dorm hall, and that sprinting sound like shower flops because of those god awful dirty floors. You would just hear that sound, and then bang 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 all over the door. Or in our second year when we were living like on the opposite side of a wall, like that type of bond that you can have when you make that new friend or just share that passion for something, be it a sport or anything else. That can carry, or that can be the true foundation of a long-lasting friendship and a very close one. And once again, Corey, I'm just grateful for you, man. I'm glad that we were able to be in the same space and have that opportunity to begin enjoying hockey together, because without that, we wouldn't be here talking about this today.
Yes, and I'm absolutely grateful all the same. And I completely agree. That was really one of our big connection points. And I have so many, or not so many, but I have like several great Snapchat memories of you and I walking around just doing goofy stuff. And it was really some of the highlights of those miserable engineering years. But that was one of the really bright spots. And I'm so glad that you recall those things a little better than I do as my memory fades, as it's been replaced by my more recent schooling years. But that is definitely something I'll always hold on to, because you were one of the few people who actually understood my energy and my excitement, because everybody else around us was just quiet, introverted engineers trying to get their mountains of homework done, while me and you were screaming at hockey games in the middle of our dorm as it echoed out over the quad. So yeah. Oh, goodness me. You're
Yeah,
so right,
our
though.
apologies to our cohort of the Gold Shirt program. We're sorry to keep you up late with our screaming or interrupt your study sessions, but you know, you never sent us a noise complaint, so
They
clearly
didn't.
people
Nobody ever
respected it.
came and knocked on the door and told us to stop. Fun fact, everyone, I had a mentor, an older student who was my mentor my freshman year, and they gave out awards to all their mentees. And I have to see if I still have this. It's one of the few things, because I'm like a hoarder. I'm very very sentimental with things, and yet I don't know where this is off the top of my head. But I got an award for like biggest hockey fan on the floor. It was a bit more hilariously worded than that, but I'll have to see if I can find it. I'll bust it out if I can find it.
You absolutely have to. And if we ever, as this time goes on, if we ever do a live stream like covering a game, or if we ever introduce a video component, I'd love to see that as well. Or you and I can always get together and maybe do an episode in the same room live sometime in the future. That'll
Oh
be
yeah.
maybe that's a nice little goal for us to have, and then I can definitely see that again, because I do remember that. I couldn't tell you what my award was from my mentor, but I remember yours distinctly because it was the most apropos, and it was, like you said, rather hilarious. And yeah, I mean, no one more deserving. I know you always like compliment me as something of an equal to you in my love of hockey, but you men truly are the biggest hockey fan I've met, and I think there's no need to necessarily not feel bad, but try to share that title because I think you wear the crown well.
Thank you, Dom. And
But
yeah, I don't know. We just had a brief moment of interference there, but I think everybody got the gist. I did as well. I really appreciate that, Dom. You know,
well,
I don't
really
think
quickly
I've
though,
yeah.
if we didn't cut that, if we don't cut that part out, interference. I
Yes.
wonder if any fan of hockey would understand what interference is, what that penalty entails if they don't watch the regular season. Just a quick little callback to that. But please, Corey, continue. My apologies.
Oh, but no, you actually reminded me. That's one of the things I want to make this show. And for everybody to know, I'll make sure that our business email is included in our show description. But there's also a comment section that I'll bring up again at the end of this episode that you can engage with at the end of every episode. So if you ever have a question about the Avalanche, the Sharks, about hockey, about the NHL, about anything this sport has to offer, please send it our way, and we're happy to try and tackle it and answer it for you, because that's what I want to this show to be. I want to bring hockey to people who maybe, as we've mentioned, aren't necessarily fans right now. So whatever you want to know, we're happy to tell you. We're happy to be the fans that will help guide you through.
We certainly are, and we're always happy to be here and talk about what we think is helpful for you guys. But as fans, but it is also beneficial to us. We will only get better knowing more of what you as our audience would like to hear, would like to see, would like to learn. And we're here learning as we go with you as well. So I know it'll get better over time, and we'll always try to bring new storylines, but we really are here, like you've said, Corey, at the start of the episodes, trying to just share our love of the sport and create that open space, that safe space to ask the questions. When, Corey, you've talked about finding a good, like a true fan, a hockey fan to learn from, to watch with. Maybe we can't be there to watch with you, but we're here. We're an outlet. We're a resource. Please ask us questions. We're happy to answer anything we can.
Absolutely. We're going to keep it grooving for now, but to quickly answer your other question about really long OT games, the longest one of all time went 6 overtimes, 176 minutes and 3 seconds between the Red Wings and the defunct Montreal Maroons, who actually share a history with the Seattle Kraken, interestingly enough. But the Montreal Maroons and the Red Wings, the score was 1-0 Red Wings.
Can you imagine playing 3 full hockey games
to score 1 goal?
To score 1 goal. And we are talking sudden death, people. In overtime games like this, it is not you play the full 20-minute period. No, it is next goal wins. So to play 3 entire hockey games in one night, just imagine the toll that would have on your body, how tired you would be. Over time, it would become that much more difficult as each minute goes on to get that ever deciding goal. You just imagine being on the losing side.
I can't.
Those emotions, that tension, that must have been
devastating,
palpable and heartbreaking.
Devastating. Yeah. The OT winner was scored by a player known as, he was a rookie forward, Mud Bruneteau, I believe is how you would say that, but I could be wrong.
Well, thank you for that fun facts, Corey. I'm glad to see that we can have more than one fun fact per episode.
A more recent example was obviously the Blue Jackets and the Lightning going 5 overtimes in the 2020 bubble. That game went 150 minutes and 27 seconds.
I don't know about you, Corey, but I was able to watch that whole game.
I did watch a
pretty
good amount,
much
yeah.
Wire to wire. I think only missing a few minutes of the third period there personally. So, you know, it might sound to the fan a bit boring if there are no points being scored.
Oh,
and
no.
I promise you it is
It's
anything
not.
but. Those overtime games that just keep going on and on. We love to say that it is free hockey. When it is tied at the end of regulation, especially in the playoffs, because it'll keep on going, but that is free hockey. It is never guaranteed. You expect the game to more often than not end in regulation before the end of the third period. So that is more bang for buck if you're at the game or if you're just watching as a fan. So we do as fans love to see it. I'm sure the players though do not love to have 5 overtime games very often.
I will say that I love watching overtimes for other teams. When it's my team, fuck that. It is the worst. I've never felt like my heart was going to explode so badly than when the entire game is on the line in one goal. Thankfully, well, no, I'm not even gonna. I could go down a whole rabbit hole, but I want to touch on some random thoughts, and then we'll get into all of our game notes from the week. So I just have a couple random thoughts from the Avalanche and around the league. So here's what I got. There was a Alexander Georgiev meme, and as people have probably heard, I'm an adamant Georgiev defender. I'm not a defender of poor play, but I'm a defender of the human being. But man, there was a post on Instagram. It was so funny because it was just this goaltender posted up behind his net, and all it was just a fucking splash text of Georgiev over the man, and it did send me laughing quite a bit. I felt bad, but I couldn't help the fact that it was pretty funny. A good quote from Kevin Weeks: "You can't win the Stanley Cup in October."
Amen. Actually, that is another reason to watch hockey. You can't win the Stanley Cup in October, but you can certainly lose a shot at the Stanley Cup in October. Now, we talked about how the Blues were able to recover, but I promise you right now, the winless Sharks are not going to the Stanley Cup this year. No matter how much wishing, praying, a shooting star, nothing I can do on my end will make the Sharks make it to the Stanley Cup this year. You know what? I dare them to. Watch them just do it to prove me wrong. Maybe that's the only way they can. But that is right there. It is another reason to watch. You can't win the Stanley Cup in October, so it is okay to lose some games. But I do still stand by that you can lose it, so every game is still important.
Exactly. But that also doesn't mean to panic if your team's lost a few early on in the season. Sloppy hockey October, as Ray Ferraro has described it. I don't have it in my notes, but it just happened, obviously, in the Frozen Frenzy. The Predators finally won their first game. Speaking of which, a shutout against the Bruins, no less, which is pretty crazy, going 0-5.
Well, that's what you had been hoping for with the Avalanche. When they had that game against the Bruins, you said yourself that is the perfect get right game. This team that is a playoff regular, good strong program, for lack of a better word, and good fundamentals just all across the board. Good defense, good offense. They're consistent overall. So it's the perfect game for the Preds to get on track, and I expect them to win not only that one, but a couple consecutive now and start to show their true potential.
I wouldn't be surprised, but there's some things that I'd love to talk about later on down the line. We don't quite have time today about the Predators, Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, but not today. Anyway, Kaapo Kähkönen has arrived in Denver through immigration. He arrived earlier this week, as well as Valeri Nichushkin has arrived back in Denver as well and has began to skate and practice on his own, creating quite a bit of division. I think I will save my thoughts and opinions on Valeri Nichushkin for when he actually closes in on his return, which to my understanding is either November 13th or 15th. I've been hearing 2 different days now floating around, so I'm not 100% sure. But with that, I think other publications, it's just something I notice when I'm going through the media. Other publications are always so over dramatic with their headlines. But of course, they need those flashy headlines to get people to click on it to read it. It works on me, but it's what I want to avoid. I want to stay grounded and not over dramatize every situation, but bring the focus where it matters.
I think that's a great goal to have. And yeah, I mean, clickbait is clickbait for a reason. They're trying to get you to look, they're trying to get you to like, but we want to separate ourselves from that narrative.
Exactly. Avalanche fans, you should all be very happy right now. Casey Mittelstadt, at least a couple games ago, was a point per game player. He was tied for the team lead in goals, although has been pulled ahead a bit by Ross Colton. It's absolutely massive for your second line center. This is the guy. 200 points in 200 games. Genuinely couldn't be happier with everything he's doing right now. And I'll glaze Casey Mittelstadt a little later once we actually get into our game notes. Dom, we have another Goober goal alert. Goober goal alert. Were you able to catch any of the Frozen Frenzy yesterday, Dom?
I was not, unfortunately. I did work a little bit of a longer shift on the day, but do please tell me.
A Goober goal this was not during the Frozen Frenzy. This was on Monday, a day before, when the only game on was Tampa Bay and the Toronto Maple Leafs. Benoit has put the puck into his own net after Stolarz, who had an amazing game, by the way. That was where that highlight reel line glove save came from. Stolarz made the initial save on a Nick Paul breakaway. Benoit lost his footing and just scooched the puck right on across the line through Stolarz.
Well, I mean, any offensive player is happy to get a goal no matter where it comes from. But those ones are always difficult for the goaltender to swallow when it feels like you should have had it, or vice versa, that you're expecting a certain shot or something to happen and then it just slides by you by sheer luck and accident.
You should definitely watch the highlight. It's so funny because Nick Paul, he hits the shot. It goes off of Stolar's pads. And then Benoit just falls and the puck goes into his body off the rebound and he just slides right over the line. Stolarz gave him a tap on the head after that, told him not to worry about it. And frankly, with the performance Stolarz put on the rest of that game, there really was nothing to worry about because the Leafs really kind of whipped the Lightning's butt that game. But thankfully, or unthankfully, the Lightning did score another one. So thankfully for Benoit, he did not ruin a potential shutout for Anthony Stolarz, but I digress. It was an absolute goober goal, and it was really funny to watch happen.
Well, we do love a goober goal. It is fun. It's not something you'll always see. So even if it's not the most flashy or fancy goal out there, it is still unique and still worth appreciating.
And finally, my last note is Lanny claps back at stupid ass fan. There was a post on Instagram. I believe it was either Nate and Lanny playing Guess Who. Very funny. Go watch it. Or them going on a speed date. Also very funny. Go watch it. And you know what? I'll pull it up just so I can read Landeskog's exact words, which they were very tactful. I enjoyed them. It was... And I won't dox the person who made the initial comment, but they indicated, "Time to retire, Landy," to which Landeskog immediately replied, "Is it though?" And to some people, maybe your captain shouldn't have rabbit ears and be responding to people on Instagram, just ignoring it, letting it roll back. No, fuck that. We're all tired of waiting for Landeskog. We all want him to be here. And I'm sure the person who's most tired of waiting is Landeskog himself.
Oh, 100%. He's probably more irritated than that. And well, I'm sure we've talked about this before about players backing themselves and that a certain amount of criticism is okay. But if he's been putting so much internal critique, then he's going to want support externally. If he's going to get so much external critique, then he better be getting that support internally. So when he's pushing himself to be back, to be at his best, to be on the ice, helping his team, his line mates, I mean, he is the captain. He is the heart and soul, whether he is on the ice or not. So I guarantee no matter how desperately sad that fan is or any fan is wanting Landeskog to be on the ice or off it for good so that they don't have to keep waiting, I guarantee you Landeskog wants to be on the ice more than all of them combined.
Exactly. And he has an absolute right to stand up for himself when people are saying silly shit on social media. Because, yeah. And I had this weird internal feeling because, that's how all good sports should be judged. But I just have an odd feeling that Landeskog will be back very soon. Just feel it
Well,
inside.
I do hope so. I hope so just for him. He deserves to be back. He wants to be back, like we said, but I think it'll also be very much to the Avalanche's benefit when he is back on the ice and back up to speed at his full potential.
Absolutely. Well, Dom, I think it's time for us to get into some game notes. So here's what I'm going to do. I have summaries for the Avalanche's last 4 games. I'm going to just start burning through them, giving my thoughts. And if you have anything that you would like to add to what I say, I think I'm just going to keep rolling right through them. Just go ahead, yell out, stop me, add what you want to add. Otherwise, I'm going to just keep rolling. Sound good to you?
Hey, you take the con, but absolutely. I'll just let you know if there's any other notes. Obviously, when we get to the Avs Sharks game, we might have a little
Yes,
bit more conversation there.
I
so,
did keep that summary a little shorter just so you could add whatever you would like to that
ironically,
summary as
so
well.
did I.
That's so funny.
So together, we will put together like
2
one
halves
full
make a
summary.
whole. Exactly. We'll have one full
Yeah.
summary of the game.
I mean, I think realistically, you have 2 periods to summarize that the Avs won the period, and I have 1 period, so it'll end up we'll fit them together very nicely.
Perfect. All right, here we go. The Bruins game, 10-16-24. One thing Eddie Olczyk and Kenny Albert mentioned is this team has way too much star power to be suffering in this way, and I'm paraphrasing a bit. Well, to our team's credit and to our stars' credit, they're doing their job. Even at that point, look at where the points were, being few and far between, are coming from. But the Avalanche were struggling to make things happen 5-on-5. To start off the game, I loved the compete level, and everything fundamentally looked better. No panic, physicality, well thought out defense. However, the Avalanche were still struggling on the breakout and getting the puck out of their own end. This can slowly wear on a team and create scoring chances, and that's what it ended up doing as the Bruins scored. Up until the conclusion of the second period against Boston and throughout the third, the Avalanche did create sustained zone pressure. However, those weren't always resulting in any shots on goal or even shot attempts, which you can see reflected in the continuous lopsided totals at the end of any given period or even throughout the game in its entirety. While the Avalanche had a killer power play the last few seasons, and particularly in this game, we cannot solely rely that we'll get calls, because we won't. And in fact, they'll often go against us, i.e. the Oscar-worthy dive by paid actor Brad Marchand. We need to figure out how to fight harder and get to the net. However, I feel like this game was ultimately the beginning of a turning point. Matthew Steinberg, making his NHL debut, might I add, taking the risk to fight a much bigger and more imposing Nikita Zadorov, I do feel mentally helped turn a switch in the Avalanche's heads, and instead of playing not to lose, they began playing to win. For the longest time, you just didn't feel the fight and belief that they could come back, and in this game, it was here. I do feel that they could have scored at the end of the second, and there were several other missed opportunities, and that was one of the biggest lessons from the game. Small mistakes that led to missed opportunities. This was also a significantly better game for Georgiev, however. The final score may not seem indicative of that, but if it wasn't for him, it would have been 8-3, as the Bruins had numerous breakaway opportunities due to defensive breakdowns that Georgiev turned away. He deserves that shot at redemption the same as he did during the playoffs, but I understand that the front office may not be able to or are willing to wait. Regardless of the 4 games that the Avalanche have played up to this point, this felt like the most winnable one. Sorry, of the 4 games that the Avalanche had played up to that point, this felt like the most winnable of those games. One final note, Avs faithful, make sure you are showing up for these games as much as you can. Although, as I mentioned, I understand the difficulties of increased pricing and work schedules because we cannot allow opposing fans to come into our building and begin treating it like it's their home ice. I don't like hearing "Let's Go Bruins" loudly in Ball Arena. Get out there, Avs faithful. The Ducks
Well,
game.
especially really quickly, especially you don't want to let Boston do that. Bostonians are loud and proud, and they don't need very many people to make an impact at a game. So Avs fans do show up. There's a wonderful arena in Ball Arena here in Denver, and I completely understand and I agree. The ticket prices are up, but that's what happens when you win, especially playing against another team with a propensity of making it to the playoffs. If you want to watch quality hockey, if you want to watch a good game, sometimes you are going to have to pay a little bit more. If you want to watch your home team lose, join me and go to the tank. We'll have a wonderful time watching the Sharks get their butts whooped. I'm sure you'll have so much more fun than you'd have rooting on your home team Avs, if you can catch the sarcasm. Really quickly, though, just going another callback to why to watch the regular season. Love him or hate him, Brad Marchand gives off energy like the Joker. He is both a tragedy and a comedy, just always going in full speed with all of his antics. Love him or hate him, he does add some fun to the game that is just unique. His personality, the fact that he is so feisty and he has a lot of fight in him for being such a little guy. So just one extra thing that can be fun for fans to watch as they're getting into hockey when they don't have any allegiance to one team or one player yet.
Yeah, if y'all didn't know, the NHL definitely has its villains, and they're villains from different reasons. But that could be a very long conversation. So we're going to move into the Ducks.
Really quickly, we got to do an episode on like heroes and villains.
Definitely.
I think we should bring this to you. I can already think of a couple villains.
Oh, yeah.
Tom Wilson. So maybe we should fill a whole episode with that sometime in the future.
Oh, yeah. I mean, during the Four Nations face-off, there'll definitely be some opportunities, obviously talking about that, but I'm sure we'll have some good there's also the Christmas break as well when they're off for like 2 weeks. So there's definitely some opportunities where we'll have to fill the empty void with some fun segments. So we can definitely do that at those lull moments. So you're right, Dom. We will definitely, I'll write it down right now. Villain segment. We'll get it in there. So everybody, comment down below. Who do you think is your biggest NHL villain if you're a watcher of hockey? I'd love to know what everybody else thinks, and maybe we'll talk about them. But anyway, the Ducks, October 18th, back in the win column, baby. This was unfortunately a game that I missed. However, I made the sacrifice for everyone because the only way the Avs were going to pick up their first win of the season was if I ceased observing them for a day. But I, of course, became very familiar with it due to the fact that the Avalanche not only won, but put up 49 shots on goal against an absolutely dynamite Lucas Dostal. The Ducks have a good future there. I had a conversation with a customer at work following this game, which I wasn't able to participate in heavily because my work is time-based, so I couldn't afford to have a drawn-out conversation. But they were expressing how happy they were about the Avalanche's first win, but they noted how we had to bail out Georgiev, quote, again, and I didn't engage in this thought, but, in regards to the Ducks game, I don't think that's true at all in regards to bailing out Georgiev. Reviewing the highlights, I have mixed feelings about the Ducks' initial goal, and I do think that they were the benefactors of some chaos and grinding to get in there. The puck was covered and then uncovered quickly, so not blowing the play dead was the right call. However, the referee was able to identify the puck and continue to wait and not blow the play, or how he was able to identify the puck, I don't know. And he continued to wait and not blow the play dead. That was a little bullshit to me, especially when Anaheim got the exact opposite treatment on a simpler situation, which was immediately blown dead. In fact, I rewatched the highlights before we got on the air today, and Dostal didn't even have it covered. It hit him and went behind the net, and they immediately blew it dead. So little bullshit to me. And
really quickly, officiating will have its inconsistencies, but we do generally try to not blame the refs when possible. And every once in a while it is okay to blame them. I would like to say, though, is I think you're right. People need to give Georgiev a more fair chance. I don't think he was necessarily bailed out. What I will say or validate, though, is you hit on it. Dostal has been playing lights out this season. I would agree to the compromise that Georgiev was not bailed out by the Avs by any means, That I disagree with, but perhaps he was the second best goaltender on the ice
Oh,
that night. I
absolutely.
think Dostal, when he is, there are not many goaltenders. Just where the way he's playing, it is still early in the season, but if he keeps playing like this, there won't be many goaltenders that when he steps on the ice, that the other side has a better one.
To
But back to
me,
you.
to me, touching on that thought, he reminds me a lot of Mackenzie Blackwood, but with even more potential upside here because he's the victim of a very porous defense. And yet, so he's facing way more shots, and yet he's putting up a performance like that. So you can only imagine a goaltender of that quality having a better defensive structure in front of them, not having to face as many shots. Hell, he's lights out every night.
Absolutely. But back to you with your
All
games,
right.
because you had 4 of them to cover.
Well, it's interesting that you say that because I definitely bring that up here. The second Ducks goal, I had to dig a little bit more as it was really strange. The Ducks, from what I understand, because the replays don't show it super well, but this is the case as it was written about. The Ducks hit the netting from center ice, and for those who don't know, whenever the puck hits the netting or goes outside the playing surface, the play is immediately blown dead. However, that didn't happen and it was kept live. The Avalanche committed the cardinal sin of not playing to the whistle, which they have been on the other side of benefiting from as well. And then after the goal, however, I'm unable to really find the reason why the play wasn't reviewable or that the Avalanche didn't challenge. So I don't know why that counted and why it didn't get taken back because the play very obviously should have been dead. And I've seen similar plays challenged before. But ultimately, I wish Girard would have just eaten the puck instead of throwing it to center ice because he stopped playing, allowing the Ducks to then make the play, which ultimately led to the goal. To which Georgiev had a great initial stop, considering how off guard everyone was caught in the moment. And ultimately, Georgiev only let in 3, which is a net positive, in my opinion. And the last goal was a well-scored one by the Ducks that came off of some late-period chaos, especially with the Avalanche having to kill an arguable penalty. Now, to actually speak on the Avalanche for this game, as I already mentioned, I love Casey Mittelstadt. This game proves that not only is he scoring goals, but he is creating plays. His hockey IQ is off the charts, and he has an absolutely absurd skill set. From the hole, this is a game that the Avalanche took over. I don't understand how anyone couldn't be happy with this offensive performance. Again, they were just the victims of a Dostal gem, which they were still able to overcome regardless, because you see it in OT as well that the Avalanche carried that offensive domination. And they just weren't able to slip it past Dostal until Nate the Great saved the day with an epic 3-on-1. But when you create this kind of offensive control and pressure, no matter who the goalie is, it's only a matter of time before one goes in. And this was the kind of thing that the Avalanche needed to build off of to continue their to have continued to success. And I feel like that's evidenced by the following games as well, mostly. Also, Mark Mosier, who I love to death, Avalanche. That's the name of the Avalanche's play-by-play man. I think I may puke after Girard's breakaway opportunity in overtime was gold. And then ultimately the elation and relief you felt from both Moj and Riker, other Avalanche color commentator, after Nathan MacKinnon scored because they were both screaming out "Score!" on that one. Absolutely golden. I loved it. All right, we have arrived at the game played on October 20th, 2024. The Avalanche versus the San Jose Sharks. Before we get into anything, Ross Colton has answered the bell, called up to the first line, and he's frankly been incredible. He's the kind of guy who just has fantastic chemistry on any line and brings the energy. But he stepped up to this top line admirably, and it's remarkable. Let's see. What do I really talk about here? Well, you know what, Dom? Are you fine if I throw out what I got here and you just build off of what I got here?
Absolutely, go for it.
All right, let's see what I got here. So when you are given that much power play time to rebuild a lead, and this was a 5-on-3, you can't just let it slip away. The Avs, in order to really secure these wins, the Avs really need to secure these wins now. And they need to focus on playing to win and not just trying to lose, as I mentioned before. you're leading and you need to build on that. And I think Mark Mosier put it well that the Avalanche were giving the Sharks perhaps more ice than they were earning. And I think we've seen that be the case before, especially when you're playing lesser teams, that you're playing down to that level. And man, is it exemplified when you're giving the Sharks a 5-on-3 when you're ahead. And I said it in the moment, that's frankly just unacceptable. The Avs have not had a lot of sustained success up to that point, and you need it wherever you can find it. And it would have been doubly embarrassing if they couldn't have stopped a 5-on-3 when they have the superior power play, and they had a 5-on-3 that they weren't able to capitalize on. Especially some may say, oh, you only beat the Ducks, or oh, it's just the Sharks. But these games matter. These are games you should be winning, and if you're winning them, then it means it isn't yet time to panic. It's if you're not winning these games that you really should be checking where the deeper rooted issues are. But this game against the Sharks was a far from perfect one, and I feel the offense should have looked similar to what it was against the Ducks. But the fact that the Avs only allowed 1 goal on the power play despite a rough second period, they remained steadfast and didn't give up any extra goals despite giving up some extra ice. So way to come alive at the end of the third when it mattered. That last 10 minutes was really critical. So well done overall.
Yeah, you hit it there. The first period, the Sharks were definitely once again starting slow, and I'll talk about it when I cover the other games from the past week. They have been slow out of the gate. I will go into way more detail about just how many penalties and just how sloppy the play is of the Sharks night in, night out. But the note I have to add is that second period. You are absolutely correct that the Avs gave the Sharks more ice than they deserved. But that second period was probably the best hockey I have seen from the Sharks all year. Even going back to their first game, the only time that it might have been better was in game 1 against the Blues in that second period time frame when Macklin, Celebrini, and the offense was just all cooking all that energy. But by the third period, they had regressed into what we see now, night in, night out from the Sharks. So for me, I want to call out that, yeah, the Sharks were the better team in that second period. Yes, the Avs played down to their level to some extent, but the Sharks also in that period took the ice. They took the initiative. They looked like a team that was professional. They looked like a team that was there and wasn't going to lie down and just lose because they're playing the Avs. So I was proud to see what they did in that second period. The rest of the game, though, I think will be simple enough to say I think the coverage will be enveloped by my my other analysis from the last week.
And I completely agree with you. Before moving on, is you can be given the ice, but it's your job to take it. So genuinely all credit to your team there for stepping up to take the ice that the Avalanche were giving them. And they took advantage of the Avs sleeping at the wheel a little bit. So, you see these flashes of, I think, what this team will probably look like in the future. It's just creating that in a sustainable way is where they need to find themselves right now.
Exactly. It's consistency that the Sharks are looking for. I mean, again, I'll beat the horse dead with saying it over and over, but it's fundamentals. The amount of turnovers, the amount of penalties, that is unsustainable. When you are averaging nearly 12 minutes, nearly 1/5 of an entire hockey game down a man, that doesn't work over the long term. So yes, these flashes are wonderful to see. And it was a period I myself could enjoy watching as a fan rather than just watching with sorrow and suffering through. But yeah, I don't have my hopes up until there's more experience and they can clean up the play, but also that they can have better defensemen behind them, because it has been a letdown to them and to the goaltending, because both Vanacek and Blackwood have performed admirably this year. And perhaps don't get enough credit for doing what they've done with such a bad defense in front of them.
I'll absolutely ring Blackwood's bell for forever. And I can't cover it this episode, but he is one of the items on a potential trade block to the Avalanche. And let me tell you, give us your fucking goalie, Dom. I want that guy. I like that guy. If he's that good with a shit defense, how good is he with a good defense?
Well, I mean, as much as I want the best for you in your Avalanche, I have very few positives that I can highlight on the Sharks. I can think of 3 players not named MacLeod Celebrini that I am actually pleased with on the team, and Blackwood is certainly one of them. And I will definitely go in more on the analysis there, but. Please don't mess it up. Greer, please. I get it. We're struggling. Don't get rid of our goaltending.
You can have Georgiev. Give me Blackwood.
Give me Georgiev, and then we can ship him off somewhere else and lose another goalie trade, because that's just what we do in San Jose, and then eventually get Askarov in the net, also to be discussed later.
All right.
But back to you, Corey.
My favorite game of this week, even more than the first win. Last night's game against the Seattle Kraken. Well, last night when we're recording this, 10:22. Another game that I was actually at a concert for, but I did actually fully watch this game because I didn't care about the openers for this show. And so it got me literally all the way through to the headlining act, which was great. So I was entertained by hockey while listening to some background music. But Jonathan, what the fuck? Devon Toews returned for this game, which I didn't even know was happening until I saw him on the ice, which was some really great news. And the Avalanche throughout this game actually had more, not throughout this game. Let me just read what the fuck I wrote. The Avalanche actually had more prolonged ozone possession time throughout period 1, despite having a smaller shot volume. Cale Makar is on fire. He's on fire. Not only is he seemingly involved on every goal, on any line for the Not only is he seemingly involved on every goal, any line on the Avalanche score, but his defensive game seems to continue to grow and get better every game as well. For example, absolutely masterful defensive work by Makar when the Kraken had a breakaway during the Avalanche's power play. He reached out on his own in a 2-on-1 and was able to poke the puck away. It was perfectly executed. But the Avalanche are exercising their speed to get around opponents and created a strong and snappy forecheck for that extended zone pressure. And this game, it truly looked like the Colorado Avalanche and their identity. And it paid off as they began to get more shot volume in, particularly in the second and third periods as well. The second period, though, was obviously the highlight, and in the third, the Avs had some trouble retaining that consistent zone pressure, and it slowed down a bit, but they still played a smart and solid defensive game that really gave the Kraken limited options. But to critique them a little bit, the Avalanche need to quit looking for that perfect pass out of their zone when they don't have time to look for it. They're getting forechecked, and they just need to prioritize getting it out and battling in the neutral zone. But overall, Justus Onanen played a great game, and it's bullshit that the Kraken got one back in the final 5 seconds. It wasn't going to mean anything anyway, because obviously you have to face off at center ice. No way you're getting down there in time. But I'm so proud of this team because, as I said, this looked like the Colorado Avalanche. Even with all of the injuries, this was that team. I would like to put this side note in here to Kraken fans, because, obviously so many Kraken fans are listening to the Avalanche podcast. Politely stop booing Cale Makar. He did not intend to hurt Jared McCann, and Cale Makar is a gentleman. Lest you forget, this is the guy who openly told the refs not to call a penalty on the Islanders a couple seasons back when he himself was the one who fell. He fell on his own and told the refs, no, that was me. Please don't call that. Also, don't forget, you ultimately still won the series against the Avalanche, and also that your now captain, Jordan Eberle, broke Andrew Cogliano's neck in that same series. Anyways, an important stat.
No, this is important. Kraken fans, if you are listening, you have no room to hate. Listen, I get it. When there's high talent and you lose to it, it can be frustrating. But just take a minute to appreciate the quality, the class of the man on and off the ice, but the quality of the player on the ice. what is it, 11 points now Cale has early in the season. And like you
I think he's at
highlighted,
14 actually now.
was he at 14 now?
He's leading
Most
the
of those
league.
being assists. He's leading the league as a defenseman, not to mention the fact that the goals that he has prevented that were great rush opportunities on the defensive side. Those don't count as points, but golly, they should. They fucking should. Like, he's saved a couple goals. He's assisted on so many that he's leading the league. Like, I get it. You wish he was on your team. If he was on your team, you'd be the one saying all hail Cale. So don't boo him. He's a talent. Appreciate it. Be grateful that you got to see him play live.
And it feels like they're treating him like he's a career rat, like Brad Marchand, like Tom Wilson, like anybody else. And it's frustrating because you see plays like the one that occurred with Cale and Jared McCann all the time across the league. And you always know that the guy who does the hurting, 90% of the time, never intends to do the hurting. And you can see the regret, the remorse immediately on their face. But it's something that happens so often that you kind of have to be quick to forgive and forget. And I can't lie when I say it feels petty. And I am the king of petty. I am so petty, especially when it comes to hockey. It feels a little ridiculous at this point that 2 years later, they're still booing Cale Makar over an incident that, of course, Jared McCann did not deserve to get a concussion after the play was already blown dead. I completely see the wrongdoing in that, and I'm not defending Cale's actions for that play, but it just feels like a drop in the bucket in the grand scheme of things, especially when the series was ultimately won, as well as you took out one of our key players all the same. So it feels like really the debt's repaid there. But that's my opinion on the matter. Not that it matters to any Kraken fans out there.
Well, and you're right. It might not matter to any Kraken fans out there. People, haters are gonna hate. It's a phrase for a reason. But
and I mean, in all fairness, I know the Avalanche fans have booed Jordan Eberle, especially in the season following, and I don't know if we boo him anymore, to be honest with you. But ultimately, this is just me sharing the opinion because it's mine and Dom's show, and I can say what I want, but I do want to say it tactfully. Kraken fans, please enjoy the game however you're going to enjoy it. That's just my opinion on the matter, and I mean that. I want everybody to enjoy hockey, no matter who you are, so please, Kraken fans, continue to enjoy the game. An important stat line, though, from this game was this one. The Avalanche, through the first 4 games, allowed 25 goals. In the last 3 games, they have allowed 5, technically 6 by this game's conclusion. The stat line was shown halfway through. So you can see it coming back together as this team has navigated playing together with an incredibly injured lineup. At the conclusion of this game, not only did the Avalanche pick up their 3rd straight win, but Devon Toews hit 400 games played in his career, and Cale Makar set yet another franchise record by becoming the leader in power play points by a defenseman.
Oh, wow. I did not realize that one, but way to go. Congratulations, sir.
Cale Makar, I think, is going to own every single Avalanche defensive record by the time he finishes his career there. And it will be by a wide margin. Considering the fact that he's this early on in his career and he's already smashing these records from other players, it I think, frankly, will be unattainable by any future Avalanche defenseman. But
absolutely. I mean, the all hail Cale chants have already started, but just imagine when his jersey is put in the rafters. I think at this point, he continues on his current trajectory. Yes, it's early in his career, but the fact that he's breaking these records this early in his career, well, I see that as the type of player who is a franchise player, who is someone who will be around for the long haul and continue to set records of his own.
He's actually my pick for if the Avalanche ever had to select a new captain. He would be my pick for captain over Nathan MacKinnon, actually. I would think Cale Makar would be. But everyone, it's time for your favorite part of the show, In the Tank with Dom. It's Dom's opportunity to talk about the lovely yet perhaps floundering San Jose Sharks on their path to re-obtaining their Stanley Cup dreams and glory. Dom, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, sir. And floundering seems like an absolutely perfect way to describe the team. I had written down here that I don't know what league the Sharks think they're playing in, but going back to October 17th against the Blackhawks, they were playing 20,000 leagues below the quality that the Blackhawks offered. And yes, I've said it before, I love puns, especially when they're ocean related for the Sharks. So do forgive me if that is not your cup of tea. But the real thing is that the Blackhawks, this was supposed to be the first opportunity to see Bedard versus Celebrini. And Celebrini is still out injured. Unfortunately, I will just throw this in now. 2 days ago, it was updated that he is expected to be out for another 2 weeks. They have been quiet overall. That hip injury is lingering, but supposedly is improving. But unfortunately, we will not see him until November, closer to the November 8th timeframe, to my understanding, unfortunately. So, Macklin, please heal up. We need you back in whatever form you can muster, but also don't rush yourself because you are the future of this franchise. And without you, well, we've seen what's happening. So we need you to be okay for the long haul. With that, I'll focus on the games themselves since unfortunately Mr. Celebrini has not been able to participate, but hopefully I can talk more about him soon when he is back on the ice. Returning to the October 17th game against the Blackhawks, though, the Sharks were absolutely dominated throughout the game. The Blackhawks maintained possession, game pace throughout the entire first period, taking nearly 3 times as many shot attempts as the Sharks. I don't believe they were all on net, but the Blackhawks were able to log over 30 shot attempts in the first period. And that's, yes, they may not show up on the shot on goal, but 30 attempts. That is ridiculous. That is unacceptable. And on top of that, the number of power play opportunities the Sharks conceded, they gave up not 1, but 2 5-on-3 opportunities. Now, I don't know about...
converted on?
Ironically, no. The Blackhawks did, however, convert on 2 prior penalties during the game, both on amazing tape-to-tape passes to the middle from Tara Vinen. I know Carolina fans miss him, but he set up 2 plays. I don't have it written down here, unfortunately, who each of those goals were, but perfect passes to the net front to score each of those power play goals, and I believe less than a minute on the power play. Yet, thankfully, the Chicago power play decided to sit back, similar to what you described earlier in the Avs game. And on both 5-on-3 opportunities, they failed to convert against a porous and awful Sharks defense. So I don't credit that to the Sharks. I credit that to poor play from the Blackhawks. They should have had more goals when they had those opportunities. It's that simple. They were able to shred the penalty kill on those first 2 power plays. Like I said, Tara Vinen just having his way with passing and finding whoever was open and in the right position to score. So that was very unfortunate, and the lazy defense continued. Poor positioning, no one covering the body of Dickinson as he is standing right next to the post, and was able to get his first goal of the season. Now, personally, I don't know the first name of this Dickinson. He is not someone you hear about on the stat line who's lighting things up for Chicago. He's just your average Joe Schmo hockey guy, and yet you just leave him right next to your goaltender, like 2 feet away on the corner of the post with no defense, no body, no check, no nothing. Like, the Sharks need to figure out their assignments and stop sending 3 guys to cover 1 and leaving everyone else open. I think they feel like, oh, I was covering someone, my bad. Then they're not accountable. No, that they are accountable. 2 people messed up their assignment there. They're not switching off of guys when they need to, or they're not going to where they should be on the ice. It is poor hockey sense, and it needs to improve. The one shining light in that is Toffoli. Tyler Toffoli continues to succeed. he logged his third goal of the season in that game, cleaning up the garbage in front of the net off a turnover in the defensive zone by Chicago. So when I talked about players earlier not named Macklin Celebrini and how there were three of them, Mackenzie Blackwood is one, Tyler Toffoli is another that has been one of the rare shining lights on the Sharks team. Later in the game, the Sharks were able to respond with a delayed penalty and score a 6-on-5 goal from Fabian Zetterlund, but did not provide nearly enough offense throughout the game, seemed to be asleep at the wheel, and once again, just weren't up to the task of playing NHL level hockey. To be this porous, play such a poor game against another basement dweller team in the rebuilding phase was a testament to really just how bad they are this year, especially without that electric offense of Celebrini. Even the risk of him will draw some attention for defenders, and that opens up ice for the Sharks to take, but they are certainly not taking it of their own accord, and oftentimes giving it up for free along with the puck while they're at it. Moving on to the game on the 18th. So this is the second day of a doubleheader on the road, first in Chicago and then flying to Winnipeg. So after a rough night against the Blackhawks, the Sharks are tired. William Eklund was out with an upper body injury and was pronounced day-to-day. Will Smith, the rookie, was actually scratched for load management, although I have some complaints about him to add later. Initially, when I was writing up and preparing to watch this game and what I was hoping to look for, a couple key points to focus on while I was watching the game, I figured having Mackenzie Blackwood in net might give us a chance because we've talked about it. Winnipeg is not this high-scoring offensive juggernaut team. They've always been built on defense in the last couple of years, especially with Hellebuck in net during the regular season. He has been lights out. And I think he's also taken it personally, the criticism for his poor play and just the chances that went by him during the playoffs. He is a top-tier elite goalie talent, and he is showing that again early in the season. Winnipeg, by the way, still the only undefeated team left in the league, 6-0.
I'm very annoyed about this. Stupid fucking Rick Bowness defensive structure still working. And, it helps that Connor Hellebuck is still Connor Hellebuck, but
yeah, well, and again, we respect everyone's opinion. I obviously was higher on the Jets early in the season than you were, but I also am the one who likes defense. I like those 2-1 hockey games that are physical. We've established this. I don't need to go down the rabbit hole again, but some people like offense. I like defense. Every sport I've ever played, watched, it's always been defense. So you can understand my appreciation for the Jets, although I wish I didn't have to witness it against the Sharks. This game, if I recall correctly, and trust me, I've tried to block it from my memory, the final score was 8-3. And that doesn't even tell the full story.
That was this game.
The Sharks conceded not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6, but 7 power play opportunities to their opponent in a second consecutive game. We didn't address this because the Blackhawks only scored on 2 of their power plays, but the Sharks conceded 7 power plays to the Blackhawks. And then the following night, another 7 to the Winnipeg Jets. I don't care.
What do you think is the cause behind that? Is it poor discipline? Is it the same kind of penalties that are getting called every time? Is it just lack of awareness? What is it?
It's a combination. We have poor discipline, absolutely. I've seen so many tripping calls. I've seen so many puck over glass calls. But I've also seen a few too many men on the ice. So there is a lack of awareness. There's also I'm going to express my frustrations and my complaints about Will Smith later, but he has been really a defensive liability. And I'll explain more when we get to covering the Ducks game. He was obviously not in this game, so I cannot point the finger as to why the failures were against the Jets. But nonetheless, yes, it is a combination of poor discipline, sloppy play. There are so many turnovers in the neutral zone or even in their own defensive zone. It's putting themselves in a bad position. They're trying to get back and make up the space, or just try to stop easy rush opportunities. And when you're doing that, you give up penalties. But also when they're just trying to get the puck in the corner and they're lazily leaving their stick on the ice, those tripping calls are infuriating as a fan. Like that is something that doesn't even happen as often at the AHL level, let alone the NHL. This is the type of thing that as a professional, you know to keep your stick off the ice if it's not touching the puck. So it's really it is frustrating. Obviously, if you're on offense, you need sticks on the ice, you need opportunities for passing. But if you are on defense, if you are just skating back to recover a puck, why is the stick on the ice? It is only adding more resistance to your momentum moving forward. Ridiculous, frustrating. I'm going to get progressively more upset as I continue talking about this because they gave up another 5-on-3 opportunity for over 90 seconds. 90 seconds of 5-on-3. So you're telling me you give up a penalty, you're giving up a power play, and then unlike most teams that would buckle down and focus on the fundamentals, not try to overextend yourself trying to make plays. No, within 30 seconds, they concede another one, allowing the Blackhawks way too much time with the talent on their roster. 90 seconds in 5-on-3. I don't care what team you are. I don't care if you're playing against Winnipeg and Winnipeg's defense. I'm sorry, did I say the Blackhawks? This was Winnipeg's offense. Winnipeg's offense might not be the best, but they're 5-on-3 against probably the worst defense in the league. They're going to convert if you give them 90 seconds of 5-on-3. They don't even have to move. They just have to wait and pass it around and play keep away until they like a shot. It's really, as I said, maddening, frustrating. Once again, because I have to call out some brief positives. The Sharks did, following the conceding the goal on the 5-on-3 and wrapping up the remaining 5-on-4 portion of that power play. They did draw a penalty in a power play themselves, and Tyler Toffoli converted with a redirect, netting a redirect for his 4th goal in 5 games. Leading to my third shining light, Mr. Granlund. How about a round of applause and an appreciation? He has been showing up on the score sheet night in, night out with assists on that line with Toffoli. Great hockey sense, great passing. I talked about 3 shining lights, Mackenzie Blackwood in net, and the combination of Toffoli and Granlund is really all that a Sharks fan is hopeful for or can be excited about when it comes to game time. As so long as Celebrini's out anyway. Now, I will make a quick comment because, again, the Sharks gave up 8 goals. Mackenzie Blackwood was pulled. Vanacek himself gave up another 3 in there. And then I believe there were 2 empty netters. For some reason, the Sharks had the net empty. Or maybe they each gave up 4 goals. Maybe I had my stat wrong. Either way, why? The Winnipeg Jets offense, we've talked about it. It is not this crazy electric force. Like, they've been winning their games in close games this year. They win their games close. Last year, they had one of the lowest goal score totals in the league. So you have nothing when Blackwood is playing lights out in net, when Vanacek has been overperforming expectations in net as well. You have to look at the defense. And our best defenseman is Mario Ferraro. And during the preseason, I was actually hyping up this man. Like, I had seen him when he was playing on the 2nd or 3rd line. He did seem like the next man up, or the potential future top line defenseman for the Sharks. But playing as a top line defenseman, he's looked outmatched all season and really incapable. The Sharks desperately need to trade for or just work on drafting and improving their prospect pool of defensemen, because if Mario Ferraro is the best that they can field, it is going to be difficult no matter what goalie is in net. We could have swapped goalies and had Hellebuck in net, and we still would have lost this game with how poor the defenseman played. However, with that in mind, I do hope that at some point soon we will see Askarov promoted from the Barracuda. He had started the season providing 2 shutouts in his first 2 games for the Barracuda. Whether Blackwood, Vanacek are traded or are healthy or whatever happens moving on, like, we are still extremely proud, pleased, happy with Blackwood. These losses have not been his fault. Askarov, one-of-a-kind talent to, in 2 games, have 2 shutouts. So I hope the Sharks do not ruin yet another goalie's development track.
What's so funny to me about Askarov, though, just real quickly, is that he left the Predators because he didn't want to get sent to the AHL, gets got by the Sharks, sent to the AHL. So funny.
Well, something tells me if he keeps logging shutouts, he won't be in the AHL much longer because the Sharks need that type of quality. Because, again, we love and appreciate the effort that Blackwood has been making. He has made some absolutely wild circus saves, including one last night as we're recording this on the 22nd of October against Anaheim, an incredible, insane save that was highlight reel quality. So we are not disparaging Blackwood at all, but if Askarov wants playing time in the NHL, he should hopefully be receiving some soon. Important though, I talked about the power plays and the penalties. The Sharks gave up only 2 power play opportunities in the season opener against the Blues. Since that time, in the remaining 6 games of the season, the Sharks have given up at least 4 power plays in each game, with, as I stated, 7 power plays in each of the 2 consecutive games versus Chicago and Winnipeg in the past week. I'm not over-exaggerating when I say they are averaging 11.38 penalty minutes per game just because of averages. They've given up 81 penalty minutes on the season. So if a hockey game is 60 minutes long, and let's just say we're rounding down because maybe they score, or you were just going to be kind to the Sharks because someone has to throw them a bone. Let's say they're averaging 10 minutes in the box per game. You're telling me you're going to spend half a period per game down a man and expect to even remotely compete or win? It's Corey. Tell me I'm wrong here. Give me some hope. Give me something that I can not be infuriated by this right now.
Unfortunately, I can't. And it was a point I forgot to touch on with the Bruins game. That game was a penalty fest as well, and it certainly didn't pay off for the Avalanche either. So I cannot give you any comfort in that. If you're playing, a sixth of the game without one of your guys on the ice, it's not going to pay off well for you.
Yeah, missing a full minute every 6 minutes of the game. So play 5 minutes with 5-on-5, and then every 6th minute, you're 5-on-4. Our 5-on-5 play is bad enough as it is. That it's yeah. I let it be said, I love the Sharks more than pretty much anyone out there. I really do. Diehard fan all my life.
This
is my team.
You have competition.
And I taught you all the pledge. The pledge that's been in my family for many years now. But it's really heartbreaking to think that not so long ago the playoffs were borderline a yearly occurrence in the 2010s range, and there was that Stanley Cup final that we had our shot to finally hoist the cup. But since then, the team has really, it started off slow, but post 2019, 2020, post COVID year, it has been off a cliff, under a hill, and then some. Like, journey to the center of the earth, and oh no, we can't have you come out the other side, so maybe we're just going to compress you into a ball because of gravity and just leave you there. Like, it is so bad. If the NHL did relegation the way the MLS did, I think the Sharks would not be 1 league but 2 leagues further down than the NHL level with how they've been playing. And that's sad, and it really sucks to say. It's not something I'm happy about. I know the anger, the frustration comes out as I say this, but it is. I respect and appreciate and stand with in solidarity all my fellow Sharks fans who are suffering through this together. We will return someday, but today is not that day. So let's hold each other close and reminisce on the better days and the better days to come as well with Celebrini. Alas, though, I need to get away from my reeling San Jose depression and cover one final game, which would have been last night as we're recording this, 2 days ago when you listened to it on Thursday, but on October 22nd against the Ducks. And really, it was a decent game. Again, we're talking about earlier Dostal and how great of a goaltender he is. And he continued to show out, just like the first game the Sharks and Ducks played. Very low scoring, coming down to the third period, plus an empty netter for the goal differential to end up being 2 in favor of the Ducks. The Ducks did have a 1-0 lead into the second half of the third period, and the Sharks catch a break. They get a good call, power play opportunity, and are able to convert, score that goal. Earlier in the game, the Ducks scored a power play goal off of a Will Smith penalty. The Sharks finally getting the answer much later in the third with their own power play goal. But no sooner, I kid you not, less than a minute after tying up the game, having some hope, some momentum to get that first win of the season, the Ducks won on the Sharks' ice. The Sharks are going to get them back in Anaheim. Nope. Will Smith decided that he said, "Oh, hi there, Sharks fans. I'm still here. I'm not in the AHL like you might wish I was. Nope, I'm here, and I'm going to trip a guy again." When we talk about the tripping penalties, I don't think you understand just how many of these Will Smith has given up this year. And just like that, the Ducks are back up 2-1. So the Will Smith not only committed the penalty and was in the penalty box for the first goal, but the second one, or the ultimate game winner. Now, the icing on the cake is here we are, net pulled, less than 2 minutes in the game. And for some reason, Smith is making the entry into the offensive zone. He gets angled off the puck. The kid needs to hit the gym and put some pounds on because it is too easy. He is just getting bullied out there size-wise. He's not made that transition to the NHL level. It has not been seamless. He has not looked good, or quite, in my personal opinion, he has not appeared ready. Again, angled off towards the boards. It did lead to a rush opportunity. Or maybe this was a different one. This was just later in the period, actually. Smith turns it over. I'm going to actually read my notes here and not rant about something else that happened later on. No, Smith turns the puck over, which leads to another odd man rush. I will say there was a penalty called on Granlund. It was bullshit. It was really fucking bullshit. But when you're giving up 80 penalty minutes in a few games in the season, in less than 8 games, right? You're not going to get the calls to go your way. We talked about this earlier. Now, if you watch the replay, and Corey, I'm sure you would humor me and watch it for me just to know that I'm not crazy. The defender is having his hand behind him to his left, basically holding the stick. Granlund fights through that and has a perfect stick lift. But again, you're playing for the Sharks. It's an odd man rush, basically a one on goalie. They gave the Ducks the call for Vetrano, giving them another power play opportunity. Now, I like to say that somewhere out there is the hockey god who has some mercy and some reasonable approach to life, and the Sharks were able to kill off that power play. So all is right in that sense. But when it is less than 5 minutes left in the game, and you just went from being all the excitement about 7 minutes left, scoring a goal, tying the game up, and then getting that air ripped out from under you, you can't then follow that up by giving up another penalty. And again, this is one case that it was not the Sharks' fault. Granlund, consummate professional, perfect textbook stick lift in my opinion, and that the official wasn't in a good enough position for the call. As I said before, we don't love disparaging the refs. That is not the excuse we want to take.
Doesn't mean you can't call out some fucking bullshit.
Yeah, in this one case,
and they make mistakes all the same.
Yep, in this one case, it was absolutely the wrong call. But again, I can't necessarily fault the ref when the Sharks have been a penalty machine. They have been a power play magnet. So it's a tough one. I'm glad that they got the kill. Now on to my Will Smith hate continuing, because
this poor kid.
There was 3 more minutes in this game that he just couldn't wait to fuck it up even more. And what I was saying before about him needing to put on the pounds and hit the gym, he just looks small out there. He is getting pushed off. It's not even like huge physical hits. He is just getting run off of the puck, shoved off of the puck. Like, he is not able to hold his ground, dig in. He's not fast enough to blast by these guys like a McKinnon does, and he certainly does not play to the size that McKinnon plays. He gets angled off on the puck of the puck on the zone entry. Easy empty net goal from the blue line. As far as I'm concerned, we just got Bordelau back from injury, and he's going to be going back with the AHL team. Switch him. I want to see Bordelau on the NHL team again. He's been able to be serviceable. He's been able to be a passer, assist. Will Smith needs more time. And I get it. He's a rookie. He's an early round pick. There are high expectations, but not everyone adjusts right to the NHL level right away. And like I said, the kid needs to hit the gym, and I would typically say 10, 15, but he needs 20 to 30 more pounds of muscle if he's not going to just get bullied the way he has been. And he just needs some time to get his head right. Because again, the lapse in concentration, the lack of hockey sense, the pucks that he has let just go sliding off of his stick, get away from them when they finally did have offensive zone time sustained. The amount of turnovers that I've seen, like I said, that was one such example. The penalties for things such as tripping and puck over glass, the really, really dumb penalties that you never want to see a team give up. I'm sure he was drafted for a reason, and this is not me saying he can't be a great NHL player in the future. The Sharks, for the sake of his development, need to send him down to the AHL, let him build up his confidence, build up his muscle mass, play a slightly easier opponent for a little while, and just get more accumulated to the game, because it's not going well, and it in my opinion is only getting worse with each game played. The fact that he was the guilty party on all three of Anaheim's scores is some form of a hat trick in the worst way. It's a makes me want to stomp on my hat trick. Maybe that's what I'll call it. So all in all, because we have had plenty of time to talk tonight, and I know we need to wrap up soon, and you've been in the tank here with me and taking you on this dark and depressing
journey.
Let me just wrap it up by saying the Sharks started 0-10-1 last year. And so an 0-5-2 start is technically better, but the lapses in concentration, the poor hockey sense, the volume of penalties and turnovers, it almost feels like they have regressed. This is a team sport. We talked about it. You have to roll lines. Having two players on one line to be your offense and your goaltender to be your entire defense. How many guys are on the bench, Corey?
Well, let's see. If there are 5-6 guys on the ice and it's a 23-man roster, that would mean that there's 17, 18 guys on the bench.
Well, you just hit it. It's a 23-man roster. 3 guys cannot be the source of your success on a 23-man roster. It has never worked. It will never work. This is not soccer where you just need that one superstar striker. This is not basketball where you have LeBron James or Steph Curry and you're going to be in it. No, this is a hard-fought, many guys making impacts because not everybody's on the ice the whole time. People forget that defensemen play more than offensive players during the game, and the average one will be at 18 to 22 minutes per game on the ice. That's a third of the game. You can't count on 2 players on offense to be your whole offense when they're only on the ice for less than a third of the game. And your goalie, you can't count on him to succeed and do everything. We've said it time and time again. Blackwood has been incredible, even during this series of games. But that doesn't change the fact that his goals against average is nearly 4, or I think it actually might be above 4 now. And again, it is not his fault. It is just the defense is that bad in front of him. The offense isn't helping. I mean, dare I say, I would love to see us run 2 offensemen and 2 offensive guys, just run 2 wings and 3 defensemen and see what the hell happens. Because we can't stop them the regular way. We need to figure out something else to do. So I know technically it is one more point. You remember how I felt, how much I cried, complained, moaned, and maligned the starts of the season the Sharks had last year, and yet somehow, maybe it is because of the high expectations with Toffoli and with Celebrini, but somehow it feels worse this year. It feels like the Sharks are a worse hockey team rather than a better one.
So basically, Dom, what I take away from all of that is that you're going to buy a Will Smith jersey next. Got it.
Maybe if the heat goes out and it gets cold in the house and I need something to burn, that would definitely be worthwhile.
Maybe we need to start throwing in the tank before we do Avalanche game notes so we have the happy stuff after.
Yeah, or I mean, all due respect to the fans, I don't blame you if you stop listening when we get to the In the Tank segment.
If you're not listening to In the Tank with Dom, I'm gonna find you and hurt you. Because we always have more stuff we talk about after, so you better be listening to In the Tank.
Corey about to turn into Tom Wilson.
Listen to this man lament. One day.
But remember, this is what true fandom is. You stand by your team, and yeah, it sucks, but I'm still here watching the games. I will analyze these games for you. I know we're mostly going to have Avalanche fans, and you might actually enjoy this. It can be comedic and enjoy my pain. But you know what? To each their own. To any and all of my Sharks fans listening, I love you guys. I know you feel it too. I will keep showing up here for you and doing my best to find the positives. And, hopefully some of the coaches behind the bench can hear my prayer here and send Will Smith down to the minors for all of our sakes, himself included. I think it'll be better for his development in the long term.
You know what, Dom? I have a feeling next episode that we're going to come in next Wednesday and record, you're going to get to talk about a Sharks victory. I feel it in my bones. You're gonna get that opportunity. Because, I mean, I had to wait a few episodes before I even got to talk about an Avalanche victory. So I understand, at least in that regard. So I know it's coming. They can't lose. They can't possibly lose all 82, Corey said before they went on.
I mean, if they did, that would only be fair since I kind of jinxed y'all in the game against the Bruins. I don't know if that ever made it onto the podcast. That was after we wrapped. Or it did.
I put it in the description of the episode.
I see. But yeah, no, you're right. If the Sharks do happen to catch a win in the next week, it would definitely make my heart happy. But how ironic or karmic would it be if Will Smith was to score a goal or a game-winning goal in that game just to make me eat my words with the analysis when I do believe, though, for his long-term development, he does need some time in the minors just to get more in shape for the NHL level.
I can definitely understand that, and not having the guy that you waited all this time for definitely doesn't make it any easier. But I think that brings me nicely to our final topic of the day. With the Avalanche being so injury-riddled themselves, I just wanted to briefly talk about the difference between IR and LTIR. The injury bug has struck the Avalanche as well as the Sharks all over again, and it has not been kind whatsoever. If it wasn't bad enough having to await the return of Valerian Nichushkin and captain Gabriel Landeskog, this team is still without Arturi Lehkonen and now Jonathan Drouin, who we were assured would be back quickly and has now been placed on IR, as well as defenseman Devon Toews, no longer, thankfully, who we were also assured was nothing serious. Took a little longer, but he's back. But what is IR, and how long do players who are on it stay on it? There are three important factors of both IR and LTIR, and that's time, participation, and cap space. First, IR stands for injured reserve. Tapping the three factors we just mentioned, in essence, when a player is just placed on IR, it would indicate that they cannot play for at least 7 days, including non-game days, but can still participate in player practices and meetings. A player on IR frees up a roster spot, but does not free up their cap space. It still counts against the total of what the team is paying. Second, what is LTIR? LTIR adds long-term onto the initial injured reserve. A player on LTIR, such as the case with Gabriel Landeskog, means a player will miss a minimum of 10 NHL games and an additional 24 without counting breaks in the NHL schedule. Their salary cap isn't removed from the roster, but the team is rather given a boost to go over the salary cap by the amount that the player is worth. And I've linked an article below, which includes a video explanation explaining these concepts as well in the description. But what about Valeri Nichushkin? Well, Valeri Nichushkin is in stage 3 of the player assistance program and is therefore suspended from play for a 6-month span, after which he is eligible for reinstatement. When a player is suspended rather than injured, they get no pay and they still count against the team's salary cap. And you can read more about all the stages of the player assistance program in an article by, I am going to absolutely butcher this name, so I'm not going to try because I don't want to offend anybody with my terrible speaking, but it was on Sportskeeda. This will also be linked in the description. For some reason, I forgot to actually copy the link, so I'm going to go grab that after we're done here. Any thoughts on long-term injured reserve? Dom.
Well, it's something that I myself wasn't the most knowledgeable about until you mentioned it a couple episodes ago, discussing how some teams have been very fancy with their ability to use that. And I think it is a good thing to have available. That, I mean, these teams, they've got plenty of money. The salary cap is there for a reason, to make the league fair. But if you lose your star player who you are paying the most money to, or a large amount of money per year to, not only is that a big loss, but to then also be strapped, struggling to replace that production from that player, would make it very difficult for a team to stay competitive in the league when one player goes down. So I think overall the LTIR is a good thing for the league to have. I commend it because it does allow a team to not be so damaged by losing a player. And as I talked about previously, when these guys are putting their life and limb on the line, they do deserve, especially the star players, do deserve the pay they get. And so their salary should not be hindered because of fear of injuries or budgeting for injuries. So when those injuries do inevitably happen, having that additional cushion for the teams that make plenty of money to pay a little extra to just replenish the roster, I think overall it's a very good thing. Celebrini, of course, is still on the IR, not LTIR, so thankfully we will see him, I hope and pray, in 2 weeks. We won't have to wait a full 10 games. But overall, I think you did a good job covering it, and yeah, nothing else to add.
Which reminds me, I came across this literally as we were sitting here having our conversation. In regards to Arturi Lehkonen and Jonathan Drouin, it was said right here from Evan Rawal that Lehkonen will be meeting with team doctors once the team returns to Denver later this week, and is hopeful he will be cleared. The initial expectation was that he'd be back at the end of October anyway, so that timeline is tracking exactly as it seems to be. And it states here that Drouin is working his way back from an upper body injury and will be re-examined as well once the team returns from their 3-game road trip. So we'll see what that has to say there, because man, getting one or both of those guys back would be an incredibly massive boost. But the clock is counting down to its final horn, so it's time for your Avalanche fun fact for the day. The story is told much better by the new documentary Saving Sakic, but the Colorado Avalanche legend, former captain, general manager, and now president of hockey operations, Joe Sakic, was almost a New York Ranger. New York offer sheeted Joe at $21 million, $2 million each year for 3 years, and a $15 million upfront signing bonus to boot. In order to keep a player that's been offer sheeted, their current team has to match, except Colorado's parent company at the time, Ascent Entertainment, didn't have that kind of cash. In short, the only way to keep Jesus. I guess we've been going for too long, Tom. I can't even finish this. The only way the Colorado Avalanche were able to keep their captain was thanks to Harrison Ford and the release of the film Air Force One.
Oh, wow. No kidding.
You should definitely watch the documentary. It's fun. It goes into a lot more detail than I just did, because obviously it's just a quick fun fact. But it's pretty interesting stuff, especially because we don't see offer sheets too often anymore.
No, that's a good point. The offer sheets, again, as the cap has expanded, it has been easier for teams to pay the players they want to pay and, well, also move on from those other players and target others in free agency. I do think we see plenty of trades now in the league. Is it just me, or when did the draft expand? Because I feel like when there have been more draft assets, the trades have gone up and the offer sheets have gone down. But perhaps that's something we'll need to check on the next episode, because like you said, we've been at this for a while now, over our original planned time, and I think we both could use a little break mentally.
That's right. Well, the horn has sounded on this episode. Did you know there is a comment section where you can leave your thoughts and questions? If you have something you want to know about the Avalanche, Sharks, or just hockey in general, leave it below, and we'll be happy to try and answer it. There is a unique poll for every episode. We really appreciate you taking the time to listen to this episode of the Captain Avalanche Fancast. The best thing you can do, if you like what we're doing here, is to follow us on whatever platform you're using and share this podcast everywhere you can. I'm Captain Avalanche Corey.
And this is Dom from the Tank.
Thanks, everyone.